Well, hey everyone, it's Steven from Tostemac, and it's time... Oh, come on! I didn't even finish my first sentence and already you're barging in. Come on!
Yeah, well, motherhood.
Motherhood? What does that have to do with anything? What are you here for this time?
Well, Stephen, you have to understand, like all mothers, I have eyes here and here. I have ears here and here.
I don't care if you have eyes and ears on my camera or the screen right now. That doesn't answer my question. What are you doing here?
Well, one of the things that my many ears overheard was there's a question about an IEP.
What? Where did you hear that? I never said anything.
No, actually, it's right here on your screen.
They don't need to know that. All right, now that the cat's out of the bag, let me read it. So, Angie Odell asked about IEP meetings. What to do if your rights have been violated? Oh.
No, not that violated. This is a different violated, dear.
I know. You're the one that... Get your mind out of the gutter, Mom. Come on. I wasn't even gonna go there. Okay, so, Angie Odell, thank you for your question. But before we get into the question of what to do if those rights have been violated, we first need to go over, what is an IEP meeting? What's it for?
Well, actually, it's a very simple thing, but it can be such an overwhelming event. Parents, as you start with your children in school, you're going to start with meeting a variety of groups of people who are arranged to help you to develop the program that your child is going to need. The document, the specific document that is written for children with significant needs and accommodation needs is going to be in this IEP. It's an individual education plan, okay? And it is really what it says it is. It is how are we supposed to teach your child in a way that your child can learn.
Whether the individual has autism or some other disability, or maybe it's a physical disability like missing a limb or have to be in a wheelchair.
Pretty much. An IEP can stand for anybody who has any form of a disability that is going to require accommodations or assistance. Now, we're going to be staying within the vein of autism, but please understand if your child has hearing impairments, visual impairments, or any other type of impairments, these still comply with this. And this is actually set up something by your school board. Now, when your child first goes to school, they are going to come home with a parents and students handbook.
Or should anyway.
Well, yes, they should. If they don't, you need to ask the school for this book. It is your right to have it, and you should be getting it at the beginning of every year or when you have your annual IEP meeting with the school. What that book does, and it's a very thick book, and you know, a lot of parents, they see it and they go, oh my goodness, it's just too much, and they put it aside, they don't read it. That's the worst mistake you can do, ladies and gentlemen.
Wait, seriously? I thought I was the only one that did that.
No. A lot of parents, unfortunately, don't understand the value of what's in the book. You know, when we're fighting, when we're advocating for our children, we have to know what our children's rights are. We have to know what our rights are. We have to know what the school's rights are. You know, a school cannot offer what it does not have. And there may be times when your child has needs the school simply cannot provide. But then they are responsible, at least in the public school setting, to set your child up in a setting that he or she will be able to succeed.
Another thing that you'll need to take into consideration is that not all schools operate the same way as the other one. I kind of experienced this with my job at Life Touch and whatnot, being in a variety of schools. So before the kid even sets foot into the school, wouldn't you want to do some research beforehand?
Well, yeah, you want to be able to do this. Before your child goes into any new venue, any new school setting, you need to go first. You need to go meet with the officials, the principal, the vice principal, the counselors, whoever it is that's going to be dealing with your child. With that, you then want to get a tour of the school. Now, for example, when we first moved to the Anne Arundel area, I had Stephen and Thomas, and I needed to get them placed in a school setting. Before it was time for school, I went to the elementary and the middle school where both my boys would go. I met with the principals and the vice principals. I introduced them to my children. I even wrote a letter introducing them. Hi, my son's name is Stephen McAllister. He is so many years old, and he has autism. let me introduce you to him. And in my letter, I would label out what are his triggers, what are his signs, and what are his repairs, and when do you really need to call me versus when you're going to be able to handle it. That sets the relationship up very nicely because you're actually forearming them to help your child. Because remember, folks, at the end of the day, it's all about your child. But you can't get mad at the adults for not handling things if they don't know about your child. And remember, no one knows your child as well as you.
So with all that said and done, how exactly do you go about arranging an IEP meeting? It's not like you just pick a day out of the blue and then the teachers would suddenly have that time available. Like, I remember during the IEP meetings I had, basically I would get a hall pass to go to a certain room to have this meeting, and not only would my mom be there, but some of the other teachers from some of the other classes I've been in would also be there as well. But that would imply that this actually had to be planned in advance. They actually have to take time out of teaching students to come to this meeting.
Absolutely. And in fact, as you read that handbook that I'm telling you about, the rights and responsibilities for you and the school are actually in that book. And most often, and I'll talk about Anne Arundel County because that's the one most recently that I have been dealing with. They have, from the date that you put, a written request, and that was the key. It had to be in writing. You can't just call up the teacher and say, hey, I don't like what's going on. I'm requiring an IEP. It has to be in writing. So once that happens in Anne Arundel, they have 10 days to respond. That means within 10 calendar days, they have to come back to me and say, okay, we are able to meet on such and such a date, at such and such a time, and such a place.
So for the record, we're talking about 10 calendar days, not 10 business
calendar days, correct.
So it's not 10 business days.
Right. But again, that's where reading that handbook is going to become very, very important because it may not be the same in your school district. Get that book and read it. Okay, so now you've put forth this request, and what's going to happen is then, as Stephen accurately addressed, it's going to be a meeting of the parents, the school officials, the teachers, and in some instances, the child himself.
From what I understand from my experience, it's basically going over how the student is doing in the classes and what could possibly be improved upon, which is hence kind of the reason why some of the teachers from my other classes would come to the IEP meetings, because they need multiple inputs from different classes to figure out, okay, maybe the kid's doing well in that class but not so much on the other class, or maybe he's behaving differently due to maybe a certain situation or setup in a certain classroom or something like that.
Exactly. The other thing is that it's very nice. Now, again, when my boys were younger, there was really no need to have the boys there because they wouldn't understand what was going on.
I would just run around and play with the toys that were there.
Pretty much. But so what I did was early on, I would invite the boys as soon as they were able to understand. Now, one of the things about my husband and I, we very firmly believed in never lying to the boys. We very firmly believed in answering the questions to the level that they understood. So when Stephen, and he, of course, he was the first one, came to us and said, Mommy, how come nobody acts like me in school? Mommy, why don't I feel like those guys?
Why
Mommy,
am I different?
Yeah, why am I different? So we would answer it very honestly. And very, very early on, we gave both Stephen and Thomas the information that you have a special gift. It's called autism. Now, you notice I said the word gift. At no point in time in our household did we allow autism to be viewed as a disability. Because in fact, ladies and gentlemen, your child may not do something the way you're doing it, but watch, they'll get things done just in their own way.
Not to interrupt the example, but I think we're getting a little bit sidetracked. So we're getting back to the question of what to do if the rights have been violated. But what are your rights in the first place?
Okay. Well, your rights include to have meetings to address issues, to plan for the needs of the child, to ensure that once this plan is laid out, which is what this individual education plan is, to monitor to make sure, okay, is the plan being implemented? Is the child benefiting? Or has the child outgrown the goal that was made? Because see, in this individual education plan, goals are going to be set. So for example, one year, a goal for Stephen is that he would be able to provide information to the teacher during the course of a classroom without disrupting the class. And the goal was, within a 30-minute period, Stephen would use the tool of raising his hands quietly every 15 to 20 minutes, and not more frequently than that, to get the teacher's attention. And
that was a real hassle at first.
Yeah, in the beginning it was very hard because, see, Stephen was one of the more intelligent boys, and he wanted to answer everything. He wanted to do everything, but the problem was...
Well, then I also had a question every 5 minutes that drove a couple English teachers insane.
Exactly. And so one of the goals was to teach Stephen the social cues. And so he was allowed every 10 to 15 minutes to put his hand up. The teacher had to acknowledge it. Now, Stephen had an assistant. He had an adult that stayed with him to make sure that Stephen stayed on track with the
Do we
plan.
really have to talk about this?
Well, yes, we do, because that was part of the IEP.
Wait a minute. So the whole reason that I had another teacher follow me from class to class, making sure I was staying focused and looking around if any classmates were messing with me and whatnot, that was because of the IEP?
It was written into the IEP that for your behavior management, for you to socialize safely, and for you to go transition from class to class, you need an adult dedicated to you. That went up to about the 5th grade. By the 6th grade, you had demonstrated you had accomplished those goals. And so when we had that particular meeting, we then removed that goal and removed that aid because you had attained that skill set.
Wait a minute. I had a teacher aide in middle school too. In fact, it wasn't until high school that I didn't have an aide anymore.
Actually, you had a shared aide. You just didn't realize it. By that point, he wasn't dedicated strictly to you. It was for you and 2 other students.
Oh.
It's just because you had had this person for so long, you just knew that was your safe person to go to. So let's go back to this IEP now. So this is just one example of what could be written into an IEP. Other things that could be written into is, do you need tools such as a keyboard for somebody who maybe can't write? They have fine motor skill problems. Or maybe you're having trouble with a subject, reading, math, science, and you need a little bit more, not necessarily tutoring, but you need some adaptations. You might need to be pulled out of the classroom to take a test in a quiet room, okay? So now this is what a portion of what your IP is going to give you. So now our question is, what if your rights have been violated? Well,
Does
number
that happen
one,
often, really?
actually not as often as you'd think. There are times, but it's just like the old story. And moms, you know what I'm going to talk about. When you're pregnant, you only hear about the actually god-awful labors and how everybody's birth was worse than your birth. You never hear the stories about the good births, do you? It's the same thing with the IEPs. When the IEP goes smoothly, when the transitions happen without a problem, when the year's program goes on and everything goes exactly as planned, you never hear about those stories. But boy, let somebody mess up, whether it's the student or the parent or the school district. Boy, do you hear those stories. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, most IEPs are very, very, very successful.
Okay, so what about if an IEP meeting is not successful? We're getting back to the question, what if your rights have been violated? What do you do then?
Well, first off, what you need to do is pull that handbook out and pull that IEP out. Now, I have an example of an IEP that is on one of my sons back when he was younger. Okay, and in this particular document, it said, what did Thomas need in order to be able to transition from class to class? What did he need to get his homework handed in? Because that was always an issue for him. And it said who was responsible for what part of the task. Well, at one point in time, the teacher had been changed and the new teacher had not been made aware of Thomas's IEP. Here's a problem. 3 months later, I get a report card and Thomas is failing a class. Now, Thomas has a very, very, we'll just say high IQ. So for him to fail a class...
High IQ? I think you mean high ego.
He has both, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, and I have to deal with it on a regular basis.
You're his brother. But the fact of the matter is, in that instance, there was in fact a failure. So when I got the report card and I saw that, I called the school up asking for a meeting. They had 10 business days to get back to me. Within 15
Calendar days.
Calendar days. Within 15 days, we sat down, we had a meeting. I brought my documents with me. I knew exactly which right had been violated. His right to receive an appropriate and equal education to the other children. We were able to, during the course of the meeting, figure out what went wrong. And you don't want to go in with high emotions. People make mistakes, guys. Parents, we have to understand our children are not the easiest to deal with. Okay? So if you're thinking that one of these rights has been violated, there has been a problem where something was not finished or wasn't followed, be calm about it. Get into dialogue. Don't get angry. Don't bring your emotions right away. Call them up and say, I'd like to have a meeting. I am thinking that there's been an issue and we need to resolve it.
And on that note, try not to jump to conclusions. I mean, you may think that, oh, this was probably done on purpose, but sometimes mistakes happen, and it might not have been meaning on purpose or meaningful or any of that. It could have been just an accident, misunderstanding, or a mistake.
And that is the truth. So, and it may be that you didn't get all the information that you should have. One of the issues I frequently had with my boys, and I'm sure many of you have, is they would forget to bring papers home to me, forget to give them to me when they did make them home.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Wonder about that. So anyway, so if you find that something has been violated, first sit down with your local level, with the teachers, the members of the IEP board. If after you had that, you are still not satisfied that your problem has been solved to the best, then what you do is you call up your board, your school board, okay? Most of them have a compliance officer, and that's who you're going to be talking to next, okay? Now, in that book of rights that I told you about that you should be getting at the first of the year, all of this information is there. It will even have the phone number and the title. It won't necessarily have the name, but it will have the title and the phone number of who to call in what instance. Okay? And was there any other questions, Stephen?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, the IEP is a very, very important thing. And I need you to understand that when you get that handbook, it's like the rules to the game of baseball. You
Basically your lifeline.
Yeah, you can't play the game if you don't know the rules. You won't know the rules if you don't read the book.
And on that note, I'm going to go ahead and end the vlog here. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you like what you saw, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And that's how you're supposed to say it.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Oh, stop it. And if you have any recommendations for what topics you would like for us to go over in the next autism vlog, let us know either in the comments or email us at tostemac@gmail.com. Also, we are still looking for questions for the dad version of Q&A. So dads, if you have any questions, let us know with the hashtag #DadAsksQuestions. And you can either email to us on tostemac@gmail.com or in the comments below or on Facebook.
And remember, guys, it's really important that you get your questions out there, because if we've learned nothing over the years, moms, we need 1,000 words to say one item. Dads need 2 grunts to say that item. Dads, I know you're out there. I know you're hurting behind the diagnosis on your boys, and I know you're confused and you're scared, but I also know you got the testosterone that says you've got to buck up and just deal with it. This is your son.
Okay,
This
now...
is your daughter. Don't go there.
Now I'm calling baloney. Your eyes and ears don't go everywhere.
Oh, yes, they do. So,
Okay, on that creepy note, thanks for watching, and until the next video, see you later.
bye.
Don't look at me like that.
One day you too will be a father and understand.
Help!
There is no help.